Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the 20-year celebration. My apologies for not being able to be there. The front office of the Crocs asked me to put together a short videotape for the occasion. I think obviously when you get to a 20-year milestone, two things happen. You start to look back across what happened over those 20 years, some of the things that have been really good, possibly some of the things that haven't gone as well as they should, and then you try to project that experience forward for the next 20 years, and in order to try and make the franchise stronger and better than it's been in the first 20. So to do that, I thought I'd look at some of the things that have been really good about the Crocodiles and the Suns, and some of the things perhaps where we might have fallen short. So I'll start with maybe a couple of the negative things. First thing is we haven't won the bloody thing yet, as hard as we've tried, and I can still recall on the very first season when we won just 4 games and lost 22, and in the very last game we got a standing ovation, and I can still remember David Carmichael and I looking at each other and saying, what the hell's going on here? You know, we've come stone motherless last and we get a standing ovation. But I think at the time, you know, it was just a recognition of the fact that for the very first time, Townsville had competed in a national sporting competition, and it had never done that before. So we were kind of getting some appreciation for the effort of just participating. But I don't think it was the intention at all of the founders of the Suns and the Crocodiles to just participate. Clearly, we wanted to be a winning franchise, and I think we will have expected when we first started that we might have won more games, more championships I should say, than we have at this present point in time. So it's been a fairly tough road. I know when we first started we made very slow progress. I think we won 4 games in our first year, 6 in our second, and then it was 9, and then it was 12, and then it was 14. So we're always getting better, but we never really cracked the playoffs. And then Ian Stacker came along and did a wonderful job of putting a fairly talented team together, and he really took the franchise to that playoff level and even to the finals, and only just missed out. But he actually established what I thought was a fairly high standard for the franchise in terms of the way it competed in the competition. And subsequently, you know, with Trevor and now with Paul, I think that standard has been maintained. The team has always been in a position to pretty much win the championship, even though we haven't got to the point where we've done that. I know when we first started, the competition was very different. I remember Perth had the likes of James Crawford and Scott Fisher and Andrew Vlahoff and Ricky Grace, and the Melbourne Tigers had the likes of Andrew Gaze and Copeland and Bragg. I think Heel and Leroy Loggins and so forth were playing with Brisbane, so it was a very strong league, and obviously a very difficult league for us. But I guess barring the chance that Paul, you might pull out a championship this year and give us the chance at least to have won 1 in our first 20 years, I think we should try and look forward a little bit and think, you know, why is it that we haven't quite got there? Why is it that we haven't won perhaps 1, 2 or even 3 championships in that first 20 years? And what could we potentially do differently to try and turn that around and become a franchise that's known for winning national championships? So that's just something to think about. I think the second, possibly the second negative, and I haven't really been around much to see this, but clearly some of the crowds and attendances at the games have dropped off somewhat in recent years, and that's obviously something that's important to the franchise, because you need to have that groundswell of support and try and have a collective group, not just in terms of the business itself, but also in terms of the support group. So I can't really pass any judgment on why that's occurred. I do know in those first years, everyone that turned up to a game felt that they needed to be there. They felt very much a part of the family of the Townsville Suns, and they really felt that if they didn't turn up to a game, they were actually letting the franchise down. Now, I'm not quite sure how you cultivate that type of atmosphere, but clearly that would be something to look forward to over the next 20 years. How can we bring back that feeling that we got a full stadium and we've got sold out games, and everyone that turns up feels like they just need to be there to help the team win. So there are probably a couple of things on the negative side, but obviously there have been a lot of positives. I think the very first positive is we're still there. We're still in the competition. And if you look back 20 years ago, there are some teams that have fallen by the wayside. The Brisbane Bullets, the Sydney Kings, although they've come back since then. I think you'll find there's 2 or 3 Melbourne teams that have sort of failed. North Melbourne and the Magic are no longer there. Newcastle are no longer there. Canberra are no longer there. I mean, it's been a terrific effort to have maintained your position in the league and essentially have done quite well in a business sense. So that's been a terrific thing. I suppose, you know, a second thing, and I only read this earlier this year, is that currently I think you have 5 players from the Townsville region or the North Queensland region in the team. And that's another terrific achievement. I think, you know, when we set out, there was an intention not just to try and win the league and to have a professional sports team, but also to try and encourage the development of the players in the North Queensland area, in the hope that the team at some point would have a fairly large percentage of players, you know, that had grown up in the local area. And I know when I read that this year that there were currently 5 players that sort of fitted that category. I thought, well, that's a tremendous achievement for the franchise. But I think the overwhelming thing is that the franchise itself has been very honest in its effort, and it has a degree of integrity about it in terms of how it's fitted itself into the North Queensland community. You know, I think the very fact that you know, many of the players that have come to Townsville have actually stayed even after they've retired and have made their lives with their families there is a sort of testament to how close the team is linked with the community. I think in terms of its citizenship of the NBL, it has been very strong. I know it's always been very concerned about staying within the salary cap, and whilst some folks feel that that may have given them some disadvantage in terms of winning championships, it's certainly made the integrity of the franchise very, very strong. So I think, you know, there have been a lot of positives and a lot of things that, you know, you will want to hang on to and continue into the next 20 years. I guess on a personal note, I guess what I'd like to do is just thank those players and the staff that were involved in the early days, you know, when I was coaching. Often in subsequent years we've been referred to as a losing franchise. And, you know, even though, yes, our win-loss record wasn't the best, I think that I'm very proud of what the team had done, what the staff had done. We were faced with a very, very difficult challenge in those early days. Someone had to go first, and I still hold, you know, all those players and the staff involved, I thought gave their very best, were very professional in what they did, and they really set the foundation for what was to come later, where the franchise got itself into a position of regularly being in playoff contention. And I think the last group to sort of thank would be those folks who were involved in the lead up to Townsville actually entering the National Basketball League. That was a long exercise. It took almost 7 years to get from where we were in a very strong state league position to actually being in the National Basketball League. And there were a lot of folks who voluntarily helped and were involved in trying to get the team into the franchise. Ultimately, it was an extremely strong group of shareholders that came together to cause it to happen. But, you know, I'd just like to pay my tribute to those guys who actually got the thing started in the first place. I think finally, I'd just like to wish you all the best in the celebrations. Again, I'm sorry I can't be there. Hopefully I can get to at least one game in this 20th year to watch the team play. Be great, Paul, no pressure if it was the final. But I hope you have a wonderful time and you enjoy the celebration of the 20th year. I'm currently in Paris at the moment, so we would probably say, Viva la Crocodiles. In other words, long live the Crocodiles. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching the Veterans game and you see Brad Davidson on the bench, he'll be just reminiscing about his time when I was coaching him. All the best, guys. See you.